Welcome back to the channel. Today we have Illinois, the Prairie State. Let's move along. There we go. So, Illinois, it's obviously the one in red there. Midwestern Midwestern. It's the central United States is pretty much. Midwestern would be over towards Colorado. So, I do know my geography of the United States. Anyway, Illinois received statehood December 3rd, 1818. It was the 21st state to join the Union. The capital of Illinois is Springfield. And if you are into American culture and American stuff, you may have heard of Springfield from The Simpsons. Not the same place. The Springfield from The Simpsons is a fictionalized American city and has no reference to Springfield, Illinois. Anyway, population 12.8 million, making it the 6th most populous state, which is kind of interesting that it is not, well, that it is as populous as it is, considering some of the other states in the United States. Anyway, the area is 57,915 square miles, which is 149,997 kilometers squared. Four largest cities in Illinois are Chicago, Aurora, Naperville, and Joliet. Moving on. History of Illinois. The French started exploring what would later become Illinois, and they started in about 1673, specifically the Illinois River. It was explored by Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet, and so that's how they get the French names there in Illinois. The Marquette, he founded Grand Village. Anyway, shortly after the French got there. The French continued to explore and settle the area until 1763, when the British claimed the territory after the French lost the 7 Years' War. So the what was French territory at that time was claimed by the British. The United States then claimed the territory. The French settlers ended up moving westward in the state to avoid being subject to the British, and the British weren't really interested in the territory, or the Americans for that matter. There wasn't much interest from either of them. The Crown, so the British Crown, made the territory a reserve for the Indians at that point in time, and it was then part of the British province of Quebec, which was another territory that they claimed from the French. Then Virginia, the state of Virginia, claimed Illinois County in 1778, which is when the United States kind of got in on this. And then later, the states who had claim to the land that was going to be Illinois ceded claim to that land to the federal government, and that's when the Northwest Territory was organized, and that spanned Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and part of Minnesota. So later, so that, the Illinois Wabash Company, they owned a lot of that territory, and then they organized the territory in 1808, or excuse me, 1809, with the capital being at Kaskaskia. Kaskaskia? I think that's right. I have no idea. Then in 1818, Illinois became the 21st state. The capital of the state at that time was still the capital of where the territory was Kaskaskia. However, that was later changed, with the capital being moved to Springfield between 1818 and 1837. It's kind of funny because the what I say is that, or what I said was that the capital, it took them years to move it. Well, the thing is that in 1818 it was at Kaskaskia, and then they moved it to Vandalia, and then in 1837 they finally moved it to Springfield. So there were 3 state capitals during the course of Illinois' history. Illinois was admitted to the Union as a free state. There were, however, already slaves in the state, around 900 at the time of statehood, and the state did vote against making slavery legal, but it was not enforced, and people were allowed to import slaves. That's part of the state constitution and stuff. It just didn't get didn't get what it needed at that point in time. It was a free state, but it did, people weren't really looking at that and saying, oh, we got to do something about this. Then you have the southern portion of the state, which they called Egypt, or Little Egypt. They were settled by people from the south, which was very unfriendly to blacks at that point in history. So the Constitution was rewritten with provision for exclusionary laws to be passed. So what this means is, like, if you've heard of like the South and you've been listening to the channel and stuff, around the United States at the point of the Civil War, well, I shouldn't say at the point of the Civil War, what I should say is after the Civil War, there were a lot of laws called Jim Crow laws. And these were exclusionary laws meant to exclude people, specifically blacks, and disenfranchised people from having rights. And so the Illinois Constitution was rewritten in 1848 to make for these provisions so that exclusionary laws could then be passed later in time. In 1853, a law was passed to prohibit blacks, and this is what we're talking about, to prohibit blacks from even settling in the state, which is really weird because this was a free state, and the state supported the Union in the Civil War, but at the same time, they allowed slavery, and they didn't allow black people to settle in the state. So, who knows? I don't know what their thinking behind this was. Illinois provided 250,000 troops for the Union Army, and there was a large influx of people after the Civil War into the 20th century because of Chicago. The population of Chicago went from 5 million to 12 million people. Illinois was part of the Manhattan Project. The University of Illinois conducted the first sustained nuclear reaction. In 1957, Argonne National Laboratory near Chicago activated the first experimental nuclear power generating system in the United States. And by 1960, the first privately financed nuclear plant in the United States, Dresden 1, was established near Morris, Illinois. And then in 1967, Fermilab, a national nuclear research facility, opened near Batavia. I hope I'm saying that right. They opened a particle accelerator, which was the world's largest particle accelerator for 40 years. There's 11 plants currently operating. It's the leading state in the amount of power that's generated by nuclear energy in the United States. So they had a large influx of people because of this need for new workers and all that kind of stuff going into the 20th century. All right, so geography and climate. There's kind of two. We have it's a Midwest state, and there are the interior plains. Let me back up a bit. Okay, so Charles Mound is the highest point in the state. It's 1,235 feet high, and that's 376 meters. Northern Illinois, Chicagoland is mostly metropolitan area. We have central Illinois that's prairie, mainly agriculture. And then we come down into southern Illinois, which has some agriculture. and then oil and coal deposits in the state. So it's interior plains. It's, it's like I said, it's the Midwest of the United States, so it's interior plains. It's mostly flat. Then we have the northern, which is a lot of metropolitan area and things. Then we go to the central, which is prairie, mainly agriculture. Then you go down to the south, which is where they have the mining and things in the south. Illinois, the northern part of the state is humid continental, and then you have the southern part of the state, which is humid subtropical. Illinois averages approximately 51 days of thunderstorm activity in a year, which is above the average number of thunderstorm days in the United States. Illinois is vulnerable to tornadoes, with an average of 35 occurring annually. And the state, that puts the state at approximately 5 tornadoes per 10,000 square miles annually. So anywhere in the state you could get hit by around 5 tornadoes. While the tornadoes, they're not really any more powerful than anywhere else in the United States. There's a section of the United States that we call Tornado Alley because it is prone to tornadoes. And some of the deadliest tornadoes that have hit the United States have hit Illinois. The tri-state tornado of 1925 killed 695 people in 3 states, and 613 of those victims were in Illinois. So that's like 695 people died across 3 states, but 600 plus of that 695 were in Illinois, and that's one of the one of the more deadly tornadoes to hit the United States. Industry is spread between agriculture, manufacturing, renewable energy, interestingly enough, services, and tourism. Corn, soybean, dairy products, and wheat are among the biggest. Popcorn and pumpkins, interestingly enough, Illinois is the largest producer of pumpkins in the United States. There's even a large watermelon growing area as well. Some of the companies from that particular industry of agriculture, Archer Daniels Midland, Cadbury Adams, Del Monte, General Mills, Heinz Kraft, Sara Lee. Farm machinery, that's kind of in the manufacturing. We have John Deere and Caterpillar that are big names in that particular industry. We also have Boeing and Navistar that are in that area. There's a lot of education because we talked about earlier that the Manhattan Project, which was about nuclear energy and the nuclear bombs and all that stuff, kind of got a start and participated in that, and it was in Illinois here. So they have University of Chicago, Loyola, DePaul, Illinois State, Northern Illinois, and Northern Illinois and Southern Illinois Energy, and these are all kind of tied in with that renewable energy field that I mentioned. We also have the services industry with like healthcare and Hospira. Some of the tourist stuff is we have a lot of sports in Illinois and NASCAR, and we'll talk about those as we get into this. So sports, Chicago has a huge draw for tourists. Let me actually jump ahead to Chicago. So a lot of the professional sports teams, should say a lot, but there are a lot of professional sports teams in Illinois that are based in Chicago. There's also the Navy Pier with museum, shopping, amusement park, Millennium Park. This is the Bean. It's a big sculpture that everybody goes to see there in Chicago. The official name is the Cloud Gate. There's the Magnificent Mile, which is Michigan Avenue. There's a lot of shopping and touristy stuff in that particular area. Shawnee National Forest, Garden of the Gods. It was originally agricultural land. It's kind of interesting. The Civilian Conservation Corps, which was established during the Great Depression to help lift the United States out of the Great Depression, sent a lot of people to this Shawnee National Forest, and they ended up turning it into a forest. It wasn't a forest to begin with, and they made a forest, so it can be done. Starved Rock State Park, known for waterfalls and canyons. There are 13 miles of hiking trails. There's fishing, boating, camping. It's interesting because it's called Starved Rock because of an incident that occurred there. There were two groups of Native Americans, one fighting against each other. One group boxed the other one into Starved Rock, I should say, and left them there to starve. So it's called Starved Rock. So they have Illinois Beach State Park, swim, hike, bike, fishing, boating, picnicking, camping. Mississippi Palisades State Park, Sentinel Rock, Indian Head, and Twin Sisters Rock formations are there. The largest prehistoric Indian settlement north of Mexico is Cahokia Mounds. That's located in Illinois. There's the Anderson Japanese Gardens. It's kind of interesting. They created this 10-acre Japanese gardens in Rockford, Illinois. Ulysses S. Grant, home state historic site. So President Ulysses S. Grant, who was also a general during the Civil War, was born and raised or not born and raised. I'd have to double check on that one. But his home was in Illinois. The Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library is in Illinois. It's in and museum. It's in Springfield. The Dana Thomas House. So if you're interested in architecture, a famous architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, designed the Dana Thomas House, which is, according to what I've read, his best preserved prairie-style structure. Then we also have the Museum of Science and Industry. It houses U-505, which is a German submarine from World War II. And there's also other technological exhibits that are there at the Museum of Science and Industry. I did say sports, but we're going to talk more about the sports later. So there's, like I said, there's sports here and a lot of it, but we'll get to that. So Abraham Lincoln was senator of Illinois before he became president. So a couple of things there. The Soul Asylum, it's a former historic museum. It is now called the Soul Asylum, but it was formerly called the Historic Museum of Torture Devices in Alton, Illinois. The Brooks ketchup bottle is the largest ketchup bottle in the world. It's 170 feet tall. There's also the Super Museum, which has $2.5 billion in Superman merchandise that spans 60 years of Superman's history. There's also an annual celebration called Superman Day, or Superman Celebration, that's in June. The Groundhog Day, which is a Bill Murray movie, was filmed in Woodstock, Illinois. Interestingly enough, it's set in Punxsutawney, if I remember right, which is in Philadelphia, but it was filmed in Woodstock, Illinois. Yeah. The first McDonald's in the world was opened by Ray Kroc in 1955 in Illinois. The world's largest wind chimes were 55 feet tall and weigh more than 8 tons, are in Illinois. And the Piazza bird, it's a bird-like creature with horns like a deer, the face of a man, red eyes, and could carry away large animals for its meals. And apparently it had a disturbing preference for eating humans. It's kind of one of those things. It's actually it's like carved into a cliff. It's from Native American myth and folklore, but it's there as part of Illinois. I said I was going to talk about sports, but I seem to have forgotten it. So I will have to go back and do that. Don't want to go that far. I will pull that up over here while I'm talking about the other stuff. Okay, so during the Spanish-American War, which was fought against Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who was a Mexican general. Yes, we call it the Spanish-American War, but it was really the Mexican-American War. No, sorry. The Spanish-American War is something different. I'm getting them crossed. It is the Mexican-American War. He was ambushed, if I remember correctly, and in the ensuing chaos, he left his leg. And it is now housed in Illinois. The largest model of the solar system is in Peoria. There's the Rockbend Guardians. There in Rockford, there are 4 12-foot tall men made out of boulders. What you see here is the Leaning Tower of Niles. It is indeed a replica of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. For some reason, to commemorate the 600-year anniversary of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, a half-size replica was built in Niles. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, but they did. Eavesdropping in Illinois is a Class 4 felony. You cannot make faces in... Interestingly enough, there's a town called Normal. Yes, Normal, Illinois. And it is illegal to make faces at dogs in Normal. So you cannot make faces at dogs. Don't do it. You cannot fish while wearing your pajamas. And there's a city called Zion, Illinois, and it is illegal to give a lit cigar to any domesticated pet. I don't know if somebody must have thought it was a problem and decided to legislate against it. That doesn't, I mean, whatever, but you go you. All right, skipping back to the sports. Several of the most famous professional sports teams in the United States are in Chicago, are in Illinois. The Chicago Bulls, it was the team that Michael Jordan played for back in the 90s. As I recall, they have at least 5 NBA championships just from the 90s alone. The Chicago Bears, a very important, very big, influential NFL team, the football team. We have the Chicago Cubs. If you're at all interested in baseball, you may have heard that the Cubs recently finally broke their losing streak and won a World Series, which was, amazing. As I recall, they had a huge slump. Let me see if I can find the... Don't see it right here. But anyway, it was kind of a joke in the United States to root for the Cubs every year because everybody was like, they're my favorite team, but they're never going to win a pennant, kind of thing. So that was a big joke. Also in baseball, we have the Chicago White Sox. Let's see. There's the Chicago Blackhawks, which is a hockey team. They do have what we would call soccer. The rest of the world calls football. There's the Chicago Fire. And the Chicago Red Stars. I'm trying to see. Chicago has a WNBA team, a women's National Basketball Association team called the Chicago Sky. Apparently, they also have. Interesting. They have the Windy City Bulls, They're a professional basketball team, but it's the G League. Yeah, it's probably a feeder team for the Chicago Bulls. Anyway, as I said, there are a number of very famous, successful professional sports teams from Chicago that a lot of people travel to Chicago to see these teams. Anyway, that's it for Illinois. Let me know if you have questions or comments. If you've ever wanted to go to Illinois. I can't say that I've ever met anybody that's been like, oh yeah, I'm dying to go to Illinois, but hey, maybe you're the first. Anyway, let me know. As always, like, subscribe, put the bell on to get notifications, and see you next time. Next time we will be doing, let's see. Indiana, I think, is the next one. Yes, Indiana. We will be talking about Indiana next time. So look forward to that and have fun.